There are a lot of top Diablo builds and tier lists out there, some obviously better than others.
Nice.
But there's not a single one about just pure fun builds, and I'm not talking dogshit meme builds. I'm talking about strong as hell builds that are capable of clearing all content and are fun as hell. Perfected for the dad gamers out there that play to have fun and escape the reality that is their 20 children, 15,000 jobs and hemorrhoids the size of Asmongold's forehead. So that's what we'll be covering here. Starting us off, we have two lovely sorcerer builds, first one being the build. But instead of an oral delight, you're getting a Hep C infection and a burnt-off dick. Because that is what's going on right here. Being way stronger than I had anticipated, it obliterates Tier 8 Horde, rips the Uber bosses a new one, can clear everything you could possibly need. So how does it work? Well, shit. It has a few things going for it. For starters, Hydra is a conjuration skill, meaning you can utilize the fractured winterglass and gain a buttload of damage. Secondly, by tempering Hydra heads, you can go from a base of 3 heads to a total of 16. Now that may be tough to handle for the average low-test gamer, but you've got that shit handled with ease. On top of that, the build actually gains a substantial amount of damage via Tyrael's Might, assuming you're not a shit newbie and actually have it. This is due to the gear piece in itself collapsing inwards from the Hep C spitting Hydras, along with sending out a substantial amount of Tyrael bolts doing so. On top of that, it's also easy to scale the Tyrael bolts. And why is that? Well, damn my man, since the Hydras are our cucks, we in turn scale them via generic damage multipliers such as the Stormswell's aspect, which is gaining more damage than intended by the way, along with Talrashas and more. This also benefits Tyraels, meaning we slap 2 damage sources with 1 multiplier. Pretty lovely. So who made this build? Well, Lurkin, obviously. You may have seen him from bangers such as I took Lurkin's build and made it effectively worse in every way imaginable, and the Mobalytics tier list. Check him out, he won't disappoint. Next up, we have this beauty of a build. It may be of shit video quality, but the build in itself is godly. A Chain Lightning build and an Andariel's Visage build. Damn right, the best of 2 worlds. Not unlike the Hydra build, it scales both of these damage sources at once. But this combination also solves a lot of the issues Chain Lightning has. Because to actually deal damage via Chain Lightning, we need the Axial Conduit Pantaloonies. And these come with an issue, that they drain a buttload of mana. But by slapping on the Starlight aspect, which grants resources back whenever you heal, and then gaining a buttload of healing via Andariels, that shit is solved with ease. Despite this though, the Andariel poison damage is indeed substantial. With the big dick gear Makuma is rocking, you can expect ticks in the hundreds of millions, and that's twice per second, by the way. Furthermore, Sorcerer is the only class that can scale Andariels in a meaningful way. And why is that? Well, shit son, due to 3 things. Having generic damage multipliers, a buttload of lucky hit, and at the same time hitting the enemies fast as fuck. These combined is exactly how you scale the damage via Andariels, and the Sorcerer does this pretty damn well. Not as good as a rogue, perhaps, but still pretty damn good. No content should be an issue, and Tier 130 goes down in about 7 minutes. So go kill the diabetic fatty a few times, get that Andariel's Visage, and let's head on over to the next class. The Mr. Perra Gaming BDS main class for the season, the Rogue. The amount of builds you can play with this class in Season 5 is just massive. Not unlike something else. My massive ego, that is, because this is my build. It's an Andariel's Penshot build. Not only is it strong in itself, but it's indeed probable that it is the strongest Rogue Infernal Horde build for the season. And why is that? Well, shit. While other builds are overall stronger when it comes to pit pushing and single target, this one just blows shit up. By combining Andariel's Visage with Pen Shot, which has a massive lucky hit chance, along with Penetrating Shot, well, penetrating its enemies, you get a buttload of Andariel Novas. And if that's not enough, the build also gains a buttload of chain reactions via the Trick Shot aspect, causing additional Novas. So basically, a lot of Andariel Novas all over the place. This build can easily gather 1k ether and is also capable of blowing up bosses. But as I said, it excels mainly in gaining ether. For the big dick gamers, these gains can be further boosted by slapping on the Kandura's chest. And why is that? Well, damn son, because you can then pull in enemies with ease. This means that you can pull in enemies, penetrate them, and one-shot them with one penetrating shot. Furthermore, this version of the build is also immortal by abusing the immunity gained from Shroud of Kandura's when actively spamming Dark Shroud. But Dark Shroud usually has a massive cooldown, no? Hell no, my dude. By rocking Exposure, you can easily just keep resetting your cooldowns. So to summarize, you're immortal, you one-shot every enemy in the Horde, and you have a 0 cooldown AoE pull that you can use to gather up enemies. Pretty balanced. Alright, next up is a build that I can highly recommend in case you're a broke boy without Ubers. Or hell, maybe you have Ubers and just want to play a pure physical build, because that's what this is. Dioxide's Pure Physical Barrage. And why am I even showing this? There's like a gazillion Barrage builds out there. You chill out, my man. No need to get riled up here. Think about your blood pressure, fatty. It's just a video. I'm showing this because it's actually excellent and one of the highest damage output builds that doesn't revolve around either Heartseeker or Andariel builds. It can with ease blow up T8 bosses and gather ether with ease. And why this build is strong in the first place is due to, well, math. For pretty much every rogue build this season, you want to rock damage per Dark Shroud due to how insanely overtuned it is, gathering up thousands of additive damage. So naturally, you'll combine it with the Close Quarters Key passive since you don't have any other damage to scale, right? Wrong. By instead rocking the Precision Key passive with this, you can now turn all the gear affixes multiplicative just by grabbing crit. And for tempering, you still have room for damage per Dark Shroud. What this does is basically doubling your damage from previously with ease. On top of that, it also synergizes well with the Rain of Arrows ultimate. This does indeed grant you Precision Key passive stacks, but it also knocks enemies down with ease. And by knocking enemies down, you're getting the Malice passive. So to summarize, an actual viable pure physical damage dealer build for the season. Absolutely perfect if you can't afford to swipe any Ubers or if you're epileptic and get seizures seeing a fuck bunch of explosions everywhere from Shadow Imbuement, for example. Well, damn, that's the rogue. Next up is a class that no one plays this season, and that's because it only has boring builds, correct? Fuck no, bud. Check this one out. It's the Period build, aka Scriblet's Bloodwave build, and holy smokes has this guy made an awesome build. The main scaling of this build does come from Bonus Spirit, but before your reflexes hammer down on the escape button, you don't actually press the skill at all. Instead, to spawn Bonus Spirits, he's utilizing the Blood Artisan's Cuirass that busts out Bonus Spirits whenever you pick up Blood Orbs. But that sounds annoying as hell. Run around and pick up Blood Orbs? Yikers. You shut the fuck up and let me explain. By slapping on the Gorequill's aspect real good, you can just spam some Blood Lancers to pick them up with ease. Now you're probably confused as hell as to where these Blood Orbs come from in the first place though, and that's reason as to why we are rocking Bloodwave here. Each time you spawn a Bloodwave, you gain 3 Blood Orbs. You then pick them up via Blood Lance, and you shoot out a Bonus Spirit doing that. It's just that easy, folks. This build easily pumps out billions of damage, but it has one small issue, actually being able to spam Bloodwave, because if you didn't realize this, it's an ultimate skill. So you'll actually need to follow his guide. But doing that and that shit is solved no problem. With enough cooldown reduction and a few aspects, you'll basically just spam the ultimate with no cooldown. Pretty damn cool. And next up is another boner build, but boner Splinters. Damn right it's a boner spirit build, but everything about the build scales is done to deal splinter damage. This build is the ultimate boss killer and pit dominatrix, seeing that if you crawl up into their asshole, all of the splinters you summon obliterates the enemy from the inside. But it has also cleared Tier 8 hordes no problemo, and Tier 7 is a cakewalk. An overall fun and chaotic build, seeing that splinters are just everywhere. Okay, so where does all of these splinters even come from? Well, that's the Shattered Spirits aspect. By pressing the bonus spirit button, you in turn spawn an additional 18 bonus splinters. These in turn also gain bonuses such as splinters cast twice, and the enhanced bonus splinter passive, meaning you get a buttload of them. Since these splinters are also a basic skill, you are able to slap on a buttload of basic skill damage bonuses, which brings your damage to the fucking moon, allowing you to pump out billions of damage with ease. What's both funny and sad about this build, though, is that Bonus Spirit drains your resources instantly before you're able to shoot out the splinters. Okay, and why is that funny and sad? Well, that's because we have no key passive that actually benefits us in a meaningful way, as the only option we would use requires maximum essence. If this wasn't the case, this build would easily be one of the best builds in the game. But despite that, this is one of the most fun Necro builds I've ever played, and can definitely recommend giving it a try. Okay, so that's the Cringe Lord. What's next? Yep, Fatty McFatty is making an entrance. And here there are but 2 builds that I can actually recommend for this season, because they are both the strongest and the most fun, at least in my opinion. And here we have Max Boulder. Playing Boulder has been so insanely fun that I got a Boulder myself actually, and this build is all done via the Dolmen Stone Amulet. By spamming boulders, they start spinning around you, dealing 300% more damage whenever you have 10 of them out. Now this build was kind of mid in Season 4, as this was only at 10% per boulder in Season 4, but now it's just fucking massive. Now the most annoying part about Boulder, though, is that it pushes enemies away. But this is solved elegantly via the inexorable ring. By then spamming Petrify, which is an ultimate, you in turn pull enemies in just for them to blow up from your humongous boulders. This is just a lovely build, fun, easy to play, and insanely bonkers. The DPS is easily in the billions, and with the AoE that the spinning boulders brings, it's one of the strongest horde builds for sure. Now there are a lot of ways to play this build, but I can highly recommend this version for hordes in particular. So make sure to check it out if it looks interesting. And next up is the Stormslider. Yep, you've seen it before, but there's just no way I'm not keeping it in a top fun build guide. Because that's just what this build is, a fuck ton of fun. Now whether you choose Boulder or this build doesn't matter, unless you intend on pushing tier 150 or so in the pit, seeing this is one of the best pit pushing builds in the game currently. But for hordes, it literally doesn't matter. And in case you've been living under a rock, or rather a boulder, then you may not understand how this build works. So here it goes. This build in particular is a Nature's Fury build in a nutshell. By spamming landslides, which of course deals substantial damage in themselves, you also spam a buttload of lightning storms. And this is where a bulk of the damage comes from. When combined with the unsung gloves and loads of ranks into core skills and storm damage, your damage skyrockets. People have been rocking different variants of this build easily into the pit tier 150s, and it's just a load of fun to play. Can recommend? Okay, and for last one, we have the shit-smearing barbarian. There's a reason I left this one for last, because Barb is just dog shit this season. The whole class is just miles behind all the other classes currently, but there are a few decently strong and insanely fun builds. The first one being this one, the machine gunner Deathblow build from Andy. And it surprised me how hard this guy has been pushing it, because tier 140 and pumping billions of DPS is no joke for a Barb. And the build is made possible solely due to the third blade unique. By using this, you can now spam Deathblow on 0 cooldown. This does generate a fair amount of damage in itself, but to actually start popping off, you need to start overpowering. And this is done by slapping on the Banished Lord's Talisman and spending a buttload of Fury. By also spending Fury, though, you can make sure to crit every attack using the Red Fura ring. To then gain the Fury back, we simply use the Starlight aspect and heal ourselves via Invigorating Fury. It's just that easy. But for the love of God, man, or woman, make sure to skim through the actual guide, because there are a few minor things you'll need to get sorted before you can start popping off. For final build, we have the Whirlwind Dust Devil Barb. And the reason I mention this is that it's important that you play one particular version to have a fuckton of fun and start popping off. Funnily enough, we covered this version at the start of Season 4, and it has since then gotten massively buffed. And that's the Ramaladni setup. Not only did this sword get buffed, but for some fucking reason, Blizz decided to put maximum essence on every goddamn Uber in the game. And coincidentally, this sword uses just that, maximum essence, or rather, Fury. You can get close to 400 Fury if you're a German, which would grant you a 3x multiplier. This basically saved the build and allows it to clear tier 8 easily. But there's an issue. To do this, you will need Ubers. For tier 7, you're fine without them though. Another saving grace for the build is the continuous buffs that the Dust Devil aspect has been getting. At this point, it has probably doubled in damage since the start of Season 4. And that's just lovely, because that's where the bulk of the damage comes from. A warning though, don't play this build if you want to min-max and have carpal tunnel syndrome, because you'll have to spam the Whirlwind button rather than holding it down to spawn maximum amount of tornadoes. Alright folks, that's all for this one. Drop a sub and I'll see you in the next one.